I don't regret a single step of it because I learned something every single time, but I also pushed myself to be out of my comfort zone constantly to the point where going out of my comfort zone became my comfort zone.
I'm Caitlin, a former professional ballerina turned dance educator and career mentor, and this is the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I am here for the aspiring professional ballerina who wants to learn what it really takes to build a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. I'm peeling back the curtain of the professional dance world with open and honest conversations about the realities of becoming a professional dancer. Come along to gain the knowledge and inspiration you need to succeed in a dance career on your terms. Hello, and welcome to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Sloan, and I am joined today by Emily Baker. Emily has danced professionally with Inland Pacific Ballet, Atlanta Ballet, Ballet Tucson, Impact Dance, Colorado Ballet, Mareck Dance, and the Big Muddy Dance Company. Emily joined Newport Contemporary Ballet in 2018 and is currently in her 6th season with the company. I have been lucky enough that my path has crossed with Emily multiple times throughout our dance careers. She is such a ray of sunshine, and I am so excited to chat with her today. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
So glad to have you on today. I just want to start from the very beginning of your dance journey. Why did you take your very first dance class? Why did you step into the studio, and what was that experience like for you?
My brother was in gymnastics, and so my mom originally put me in gymnastics, and I was her little girl, and I cut my lip on the rope, and she freaked out, and she was like, I'm going to put her in dance instead. There was a dance studio attached to the gymnastics studio, and so my mom was like, easy, both kids in the same building. And I just became absolutely obsessed. By the age of 8, my parents found a ballet school that I could focus at because I was like, I just want to do ballet. I did get distracted by Irish step dancing there for a while. Really loved doing that, but stuck with ballet for the most part throughout all of it. Did all the other genres at my ballet school, but mostly we both came from the ballet world.
Yeah, from that young age, you already knew this is what I think my career is going to look like.
Yeah. My mom sat me down at 9 because I was doing piano, Irish step dancing, ballet, tap, jazz, all of it. She was like, do you want to do this professionally? And I was like, yes. And she was like, okay, you have to choose a genre. And so I chose ballet.
Well, and as a parent, I get that because it is really hard getting your kids to so many different activities. I love having kids try different things at this age they're at now, but I get at a certain point, let's choose something to focus on,
Yeah.
So what was your training like growing up then?
Yeah, so I trained at Inland Pacific Ballet Academy. They're still located in Montclair, California. I was there as often as I could be, Monday through Saturday. And by the time I was 16, I was offered an apprenticeship with the company. I didn't leave school or anything, but I did every night work with the company a few nights of the week and on the weekends, and was in all the company productions as well by the time I was 16. And then I went off to all the summer intensives, that you do starting at 15. My parents made me stay at home a little longer, which I actually really appreciate because I was at a good school. It wasn't until I was 15 that I started leaving for summer intensives.
Mm-hmm. And then you started your professional career with Inland Pacific Ballet, right? When you were 18 years old. What was that like?
So at 18, actually, I got my fellowship contract with Atlanta Ballet, and I moved to Atlanta at 18. My parents shipped me some boxes. Back in the day, Bed Bath & Beyond did the whole college kid, you can buy your things and pick it up in another Bed Bath & Beyond location. Saved my life. RIP Bed Bath & Beyond, I guess. But yeah, I got a roommate that summer because I did the summer intensive. They offered me a contract during the summer intensive. Moved in with her. She was a year older, and we figured it out. I was 18, she was 19, and we just were living on our own in Atlanta, dancing from 9 to 6. Went right into Swan Lake the minute I joined the company, which was an experience. Swan Lake's a hard one.
It's hard.
Yeah. We did it together in Tucson. So yeah, I went there. Unfortunately, it was 2008, so the economy crashed. They kind of did layoffs and new hires, I was a bottom of the bucket kind of new hire. So they just kind of let us all go. And unfortunately, because the economy was unpredictable at that time, they had to do it a little later. So I really didn't have a chance to audition very many places. So I turned out moving back home, and then I danced with Inland Pacific Ballet again.
So what was that like going from living on your own, as a teenager and experiencing this whole part of life, and then going back to living? Were you with your parents again?
Yeah, I went right back to my parents. Oh, it was awful. I was the worst. Apologizing now to my parents. I was just so depressed. It felt like my whole world ended. Like it felt like my whole world had started. Like I got to Atlanta. I was in Atlanta Ballet. They liked me enough. I was like, okay, my life is going somewhere. And then boom, outside factors played a role for sure. But also when you're at that point in a company, you're very dispensable. I didn't have the ability to recognize at that time that like you are dispensable at that age. Unfortunately, sometimes you're going to just be in a studio company or a fellowship or trainee program, and then you're going to be gone. And it's not a guarantee, but it is a great experience. So I turned out working for my dad. My dad's a physical therapist for dancers and athletes. And so I did part-time work for him and then danced for the company Inland Pacific Ballet so that I could, keep my professional career going. And had an amazing, honestly, I grew a lot. I got to save money, which was amazing because I had like a real job, as people were putting it, which really made me angry. But it was a desk job where I was getting paid a livable wage. So it was nice. It was a great cushion that set me up for my next step, which was Ballet Tucson.
So we first met at Ballet Tucson. What was that experience like for you?
The crazy part was how I auditioned for it. I don't think we might have talked about it years ago, but like I live 7 hours from Tucson, like in Southern California. And so my friend Katie and I hopped in a car and we drove to Tucson through the night. I auditioned, got back in the car and drove back.
Oh my gosh.
But on the spot, got offered a contract and was like, cool, all right.
Yeah.
And so then I think it was like maybe that was like in the summer. A month later, went out to Tucson with my mom, found an apartment, packed up everything and moved back out. So I was barely home for like maybe 9 months, a year tops. Yeah, then went straight to Tucson out of that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
My audition was kind of crazy like that too. Like flew out to Arizona and stayed with a friend in Phoenix and then drove there. I remember it was in June. Like it was so late in the season. It was my last audition that I went to. And I was like, I got to get this job, like I'm booking this gig kind of thing. And
yeah,
unfortunately got the contract. It just was a little bit intense. That's kind of how it goes sometimes.
Oh, and I mean, I couldn't do that today in my in my age, but at 20, it was fine. It was a crazy. Wait, were we at the same audition?
No, I think because I was there a year before you were.
You were a year before. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
But it was probably the same time of year, same setup. Yes, very similar experience. So you're in Tucson you were there for 1 season, right?
1 season. Yeah, I did 1 season. It wasn't my home. It wasn't nothing against Tucson or the company or anything. It just wasn't. And I was in a long distance relationship and I was like, I'll go follow that for a little bit. And that's how I ended up in Colorado. Because I had auditioned for Colorado Ballet that year and didn't get it. And I auditioned I set myself to like Wonderbound, but at the time they were like Ballet Nouveau and like some other Colorado companies because I really wanted to be near my boyfriend at the time. And I turned out just picking up and moving to Fort Collins. And that's where I discovered Canyon Concert Ballet and Impact Dance. And so I got to dance with a contemporary company and a ballet company school situation, which turned out being a really pivotal point in my career. Yeah, I got to experience contemporary for the first time. That's where I started to teach. I think Tucson was a good nip in the bud for me, like because I was at home and I was very comfortable in California and I like only auditioned for Ballet Tucson and was like, well, if I stay another year in California, is it the worst? And so Tucson kind of remotivated me to get back out there and do it. And so when I was in Northern Colorado, I was like, oh, you know what? Like, I do really, 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 like I already knew I wanted to do this, but it was like, okay, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And so I found where I could be dancing. I like met an amazing community of dancers that I still talk to a lot of them today. And it was just great. I grew a lot as a person and as a dancer. And I made connections with Colorado Ballet while I was there. And then that's how I ended up in the studio company at Colorado Ballet the very next season. I made some connections with the staff there and stuff like that by just being in Colorado.
Well, I say this all the time to dancers, how powerful connections are because you know someone who knows someone, they've seen you dance, they've worked with you, and it goes so far. And I don't think people quite realize how impactful it is to be able to hire a dancer who not only have you seen them dance, you think they're beautiful, but you've worked with them, you know what they're like in the studio because you can only see so much in an hour and a half. If you're lucky to not get caught audition class, you don't know how they're going to progress, how they're going to take corrections, how they're going to work, and if they're going to be a nice person.
Yes.
It's just so impactful that you have this connection that you built and that's led you to another position that you wanted originally and hadn't gotten.
Yeah, exactly. Later on in my career, which we shared too, which like smaller companies, all those aspects are so important. Like in a big company, you can kind of get by with maybe like, you're not an easy person to work with or whatever. But in the small companies, I think all those other aspects beyond who you are as a dancer are so important. So I didn't realize that at the time. And like me making a personal connection with some people and working with them as well, I think it helped me get my foot in the door at Colorado.
Yeah. So you discovered teaching, and were you like, okay, I really like teaching, or were you like, this is just something I'm doing because I need to also support myself?
It was a combo package. I was teaching a lot at that point, and I had like some really amazing experiences and some like different experiences. And that's when I started to learn every studio has its own environment, because I was teaching at a few different locations. And so I started to learn that lesson, and I was young, and I was very like, well, this is how I was raised. So I wasn't very amiable to changing my teaching dynamics for the environment that a studio wants, which is important at times. You don't want to come in and be like so polar opposite from their environment that they've set up. I did find a lot of aspects that I loved, but I knew I like cared more about dancing at that point than teaching. So I wasn't really emotionally invested in the teaching aspect of it yet.
Yeah, well, and it's tough when you're so young. Like I remember being, I want to say like 22 and having students who are 18. Like you are not that big of a difference between them in age. And so you feel like you have to really be like extra tough for them to take
Yes.
you seriously. And then I think for both of us, our personalities, we as teachers, I think, because we know each other in that setting well too,
Yeah.
is like we expect excellence. We want our students to excel. We want to give them a good education, but we're both also like fun people who want to make it lighthearted and fun. And so like be in this environment where I felt like I had to be so, so, so strict to set myself apart from my students who were not that much younger than me was very hard. And so I feel like it got later in my career of teaching being like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm separated enough and I've had enough life experience to know when to push, when to pull back. It's just totally different.
Yeah, it's like at that point you're trying to prove that you're a grown up, I think. And now it's like, I don't need to prove to you that I'm older than you.
It's clear.
It's clear. And so that I can have a little more fun and like enjoyment of it. But back then I remember I was like laying down the law, and it was like at times it wasn't the right studio for that. And I didn't know that yet. You never stop learning when you teach, which is
Mhm.
the fun part about teaching. I was thrown into like a lot of teaching, the amount I learned from that, learning my worth. I was working my butt off. That's, we started together in the restaurant business in Tucson
Oh my gosh. We didn't even talk about that. Oh my gosh.
at Monkey Burger.
Monkey Burger.
Oh my gosh, I still crave it sometimes.
It was so good. It was
It was
so
so
good.
good.
That's so funny. Yes, we worked at this restaurant called Monkey Burger. That was small local business.
Yeah,
We were like one of the very few employees who worked there. It was like a pretty intimate setting, and
it was.
we had so much fun.
Oh, we had so much fun. Oh my gosh, I loved working there. And so when I went to Colorado, I then had like my restaurant experience. So I worked in a brewery restaurant when I was in Colorado, and that was a great way. Restaurants are just a really easy way to make secondary income when you're pursuing dance.
That's what I always found too. Like as far as most bang for your buck, teaching and working in a restaurant
Yep.
were the best. Because like retail, always paid a minimum wage, and yeah,
Mhm.
I always had the same experience for sure. Okay, so you're in Colorado,
Yes.
and then what?
I get the gig at Colorado Ballet. I get studio company. Yeah. It was a great year of learning. Because at this point I'm 23. And so I was one of the older people in the studio company. I wasn't the only one my age, but I was one of the older ones. And that's hard because at that point you're looking at 23-year-olds who are in the company and you're like, did I fail? Am I not it? And the answer is that no, like you did not fail, but it is like you feel that way and you feel kind of like, well, I have to get in now because like I have to prove that I'm enough, which was, it's silly to think back on it now, but it's not, because when you are the oldest in the room, it's sometimes hard to not like beat yourself up about it. It was a hard year for that, and like, studio companies, you're going to understudy a lot. You're going to stand around in your point shoes for 7 hours sometimes. And there are going to be days where you get to go in, and there's going to be days, and you always have to be ready. That was what I learned there. Because there were a few times where like a company member got sick and they were like, all right, Emily, we're going to put you in. And it was just a rehearsal. But even So you don't want to ruin it for everyone else by being like bumping into people and stuff. And so I learned how to get thrown to the wolves in a really positive way and about how to be a good understudy. Like you actually have to know what the heck you're doing. You have to pay attention to their spacing just as much as you pay attention to what steps they're doing. And that happened quite a few times while I was there in a way that I was like, okay, I never had to like jump in on stage, which I've done now in my career, but I did definitely have to jump in some rehearsals to a part I might not have even been understudying that day. And you just have to be so, I think I learned the most that year outside of sometimes you have years where you don't feel like you're dancing that much, but also I think sometimes you have years where you learn how to read a room. You learn to absorb everything and not just what you have been told to focus on, but like, okay, I'm going to also see what that other side of this room is doing. You know, there's a short girl part and a tall girl part, and I kind of fall into the middle. Maybe I should pay attention to both, you know, even if you weren't asked to. Because the more versatile you are in a room, the more useful you become and the more you can put yourself out there and maybe even succeed.
Absolutely. And I feel like when you are understudying in that scenario, it's not like they're saying, okay, Emily, you're going to, be covering Caitlin or whatever. No, they're just like, learn everyone's part and just be able to go in for anyone. And that's the hardest part, like I said, about the spacing, because you can know everyone's steps. And usually like it's the core, they're the same steps.
Yeah.
But if you don't know the patterns, you don't know when you're crossing over, like that's when you're going to be in trouble and people can actually get hurt. Like I remember sometimes being understudying or having people go in and they'd be like, if you realize that you are in the way, like get off the stage.
Just go.
Like, you have a moment, like just go, because it's like it can be unsafe, right? And so like you're so right. Being able to go into anyone's spot will set you apart. Even if they haven't said directly to you, that's still the expectation. And it will help progress your career. If you're that person who can do that, you will get more chances.
Oh, yeah. I learned at that point in my career, it was like, okay, like there are people who don't have understudies either. And you could be that person who knows their part, and they go, who knows their part? And you can be like this. I definitely, when I like left my time there, it was by my choice. It wasn't like I was being pushed out or anything or like laid off. They were like, you're very dependable. And like, I didn't have a long-term future there, and that's okay. And I, they were very honest and kind. They have a vision, for who they want in their company, and you're not always going to be that. And that was when me and you had been talking, and I was like, you know what? I do think this was my last hurrah at the ballet thing. Maybe I do want to go a little more contemporary. And then that was when I picked up and moved to Missouri Contemporary Ballet, now Mareck Dance.
Yeah. And I remember you came and stayed with me to audition. Ended up being like a crazy long one too. I remember you being like, that was like a 4-hour long audition. And it wasn't always like that. I think that there was just there was good dancers and they were excited. And so they kept giving more stuff to do. And I remember like, I went up to Karen, our director, at the end of the audition, because you were staying with me. And I said, is it okay if my friend Emily comes to company class tomorrow with me?
That's right.
And she was like, which one is she? And I pointed you out. She's like, oh yeah, for sure. She instantly loved you. But I remember going out to like get a burger after that. You were like, I'm starving. I need to like.
I will never forget that burger. The fact that I remember that I ate a cheeseburger after that audition because I was so hungry.
That's another kind of thing of auditions is you literally never know. Like,
no.
I feel like you guys did a lot in class that needed rep.
We did a lot of rep.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we're doing another piece and we did like 2 or 3 pieces of rep because we did one with partnering in it, which I always think is really smart when directors do that. Not everyone does that. And I always find that odd because if you don't know how to be picked up or like how to pick up, it's a problem.
Yeah, red flag.
We did like, I think we did 2 or 3 pieces of rep and on top of a ballet class, like a full ballet class. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long one. How many years were you there?
I was there for 2. I learned so much in those 2 years.
Was that your first contemporary ballet company? Impact Dance was more like...
They're more modern. They're like more modern and contemporary. So I had done that. I was the ballerina of that. But going into like a full-time contemporary ballet job, this was my first. So intimidating.
So when you say you learned a lot those years, what did you take away from it?
Well, I learned how to be a sponge, being mostly in ballet. And like I'd done jazz and contemporary and modern as a kid. And it wasn't like I was completely inept at it or like hadn't done it, but like I hadn't done it in a professional setting like that. There are so many ways to do a step, but in contemporary, especially, there's a way that the person wants you to do the step. And there was a lot of learning that just because I naturally did the step this way doesn't mean that's the right way to do it. Figuring out how to not necessarily mimic, but like how to like take in and like apply movement quality in a way that I had never had to do in a ballet company. Because in a ballet company, it might be just how you hold your arm. Everyone does a saute arabesque. But like when you're starting to do more versatile rep, it's like, no, but you didn't roll to the floor the way I needed you to roll to the floor. You're like, and you do it again and you do it again. They're like, no. And that was my first taste of it. And I actually was having a thought about the other day. There was a piece that we were working on, and it was the first time I got really genuinely frustrated because I like felt like everyone was like, no, you almost have it. You almost have it. And I couldn't get it. And I just remember being like, ugh. And that's the one thing that makes me cry. I don't cry if I'm mad or frustration makes me cry. And I remember just being like, for a second, but it was a lot of learning. And I think you have to, when you move genres like that, you have to be humble and like go, I actually don't know what the heck I'm talking about. And like let people teach you and learn from others, because I think that's the hardest thing, is that you think at that point you're a professional. Like at that point I was, in my 20s and I had been dancing professionally for several years, but I didn't have any of it figured out yet. And so I feel like I learned a lot.
Yeah, I always had that feeling too as I went on, where like, I've been doing this for this many years now, and if I show any sign of weakness, like the younger dancers are gonna think I'm not really that good or I'm not professional, and that starts to hold you back because you get in this place where I actually was less willing to try new things as I got
Mm.
older than I was when I was younger. Because I was younger, I was like, yeah, I'm just a newbie. Like, what do I have to lose? And then I got older and I got a little bit more scared that I needed to prove myself as like the senior dancer. And that definitely can hold you back. And so, like you said, you have to kind of let that ego go and be like, it doesn't matter. I am continually a work in progress.
Yeah, exactly. All that. And I think I was still very young in my career, but I felt like I had had so much professional experience at that point that I wasn't like overly confident about, but I was confident in my like past. And so I came in and it had a whole new, world to open up to me. And I had to take a step back and be humbled by that and like be like, okay, like I have a lot to learn still. Like I'm still at the beginning of my career. And it's really easy when you're in the midst of your career to feel like you're already really deep in it. But like looking back now, I'm 16 years into my career and I'm like, oh, wow, like that was 10 years ago.
Isn't it wild how well you're in it though? It just feels so important. And it is important
Yeah.
at you at the moment. Like, but it's just so wild how looking back you realize, oh, it wasn't really about you. And there's a lot of other things going on, but it just feels so personal and so like the world's gonna end if I can't get this roll to the ground or
Yeah.
whatever. Like,
it does. It feels really deep.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I mean, I loved like getting to dance with you again, and that was such a cool
Oh my
time
gosh.
of our lives.
So cool.
I don't know about you, but I still miss the Columbia food scene.
Oh yeah.
It was so good.
Oh yeah. I was in Columbia this summer actually.
Were you really?
Yeah, I was. I teach for a competition studio that's in Columbia still.
Okay.
And I go there in the summers and like choreograph for them. So I went and took class at the company, saw Karen.
Amazing.
Oh, there's only one remaining person that we danced with.
No, Elise.
Elise. I went and like ate the restaurants and stuff and then like took class and I was like, wow, this is like, it was trippy, but really
I know.
cool.
I went back to teach in summer intensive a few years ago and I had the same feeling. I was like walking around downtown, going to my favorite restaurants and just being like, wow, this is a blast from the past. My kids weren't with me, so I'm just out here on my own. It was cool. It was fun.
It's cool, right?
It's like going back to my younger self.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's crazy to because I went into like the bar I used to work at.
What bar did you work at?
I worked at Shop Bar.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Does it still exist?
Yeah, it's still there.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
It's crazy. It doesn't look any different. And I went in there and then I went into the other bar that the owners still own because I still talk to them and they were like, she used to bartend here back when.
She was a legend.
Oh so crazy.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, sidebar. But okay,
Yeah.
So from there, you went to Big Muddy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you were like, I'm going fully contemporary. Were you like, I'm done with point shoes, or what was the impetus there?
I'd always been like throughout my career and even my training, I always like had an affinity for contemporary. And I think I discovered more and more at Mareck that I was like, I really just want to roll around on a floor. I really just want to wear socks. And so I auditioned for Big Muddy in St. Louis and got an apprenticeship and I was 26 and I could have turned that down very easily, but I was like, no, I want to take it. I want to learn how to do this. I was very blessed. I wasn't an apprentice for super long, but I definitely am happy I took that risk because then I was there for 2 seasons. Once again, it was like 2 more years of learning so much. At Big Muddy, it's constantly working with new choreographers.
Mhm.
It's a very competitive environment, and nothing was ever precasted. It was always audition, 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 audition. And I learned a lot about myself as an auditioner in that. I learned maybe that I don't make the quickest first impression, but I grow on people over time. And that was a hard pill to swallow because I didn't always get recognized right away. As the processes go, the choreographer would start to find me. And so I learned how to readjust how I presented myself when a choreographer came in the room and maybe like be a little more up there and hungry or whatever. But it was the big learning curve. And what I turned out doing while I was there, because I was the only dancer in the company who had never gone to college. I was the only dancer who only came from I mostly came from a ballet background outside of Missouri Contemporary Ballet and Impact. So my ballet background was 95% of me. And so I had to relearn a lot of things. I had to ask my coworkers questions, which is a hard thing to do sometimes. You want to be on equal with all your coworkers, but I knew that I wasn't. And so I would go to dancers who were better at things than I was, and I'd ask them how they did it. I'd ask them to help me. I was very lucky that I had that. We took contemporary and jazz a lot instead of ballet class, which helped. But it was a lot of, once again, just humility and just recognizing the fact that I didn't have it all figured out and going to people and asking for help constantly and not burrowing in the corner and beating myself up, but instead reaching out, which I think is hard to do. But at that point, I was like, I'm 26. Let's get this. I'll learn.
Well, and I feel like the common thread, throughout all of this, throughout all the different companies you've danced at and your journey is that you are willing to be bad at something. And that has made you become so much better at everything. I feel like as dancers, it's easy to get comfortable, and there's nothing wrong with staying in the same company. That's pretty much what I did. I felt like I found my place, and I was so happy there that that's what I wanted to do. But I also think it's amazing, to say, okay, I feel like I have gotten what I was hoping to get out of this particular experience, and I'm ready for the next thing, and I'm going to challenge myself and go for it, even if it's scary. Even if I am the least experienced one in the room at this style or whatever it is. It's so funny to say at 26, I'm just apprentice, where it's like, oh my gosh, it's still so young. But in the ballet world, it feels like that is the middle of your career already. And to say, okay, I'm going to take what looks like a step back to take 2 steps forward is just really important.
Oh, definitely. I remember talking about it with another dancer in Columbia before we went, because he was going off to Chicago and I was going off to St. Louis. And we were both like, we're kind of starting from scratch because we're going to completely different companies than where we're at right now. And it's scary. It was terrifying. And every step I took of all these job hops, my career is like job hopping, but I don't regret a single step of it because I learned something every single time, but I also pushed myself to be out of my comfort zone constantly, to the point where going out of my comfort zone became my comfort zone. And I got really comfortable with change. Really, really comfortable with it. So it's not like I would recommend this for everyone, but I do think there was something beautiful about forcing myself to constantly go, no, I'm still ready to go. And this is kind of a funny little aside, but a girl years ago from my ballet school, I don't remember who it was, but she came up to me midway through my career and she goes, Emily, I just got to say, I'm really impressed by you because you don't seem to take no for an answer and you keep getting no's, but then you're still dancing. And I was like, ouch, and thank you. I was like, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Big Muddy was a huge turning point for me because it was I really just went completely out of my comfort zone. And I remember my parents coming to the first show and my dad was like, you've never done these things. This is not at all what you've trained to do. Not, he didn't hate the show or anything. He was just like, it's really weird because at least at Mareck, you were still in point shoes. You were still doing what I've seen you do your whole life. But this place, you're doing modern pretty much. It was crazy. It was a huge change, but one of the best decisions I could have made for my career because it pushed me and I grew so much and I got to work with so many more choreographers. And there was a few overlaps while I was there, and it was a very Missouri thing because there were a few choreographers that I was already worked with at Mareck, and then they came to Big Muddy. Autumn Ekman.
Oh, I love her.
Penny Saunders. I worked with Penny Saunders before she went to you guys.
Okay, yeah. Oh, she's amazing too.
She's amazing.
Oh, love her so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, who else? There was another one. Bryn Cohen.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So many amazing people. And you're right. It's such a small world. Everyone knows each other, and you work with a choreographer, and you're hey, they are awesome to work with. Beyond their work, we enjoyed the process.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
I think that's huge. Continue to get more work in that realm too.
Oh, definitely. It was an incredible 2 years for sure. Those 4 years of dancing in Missouri were like huge for me.
According to a survey of dancers conducted by Minding the Gap, 75% of dancers reported experiencing a mental health challenge in the past 5 years. To say dancers need mental health support ASAP is an understatement, which is why I am so excited to tell you about DanceSense Council for Educators. DanceSense Council for Educators gives you dancer mental wellness information, tips, and exercises in whatever format works best for you. Need a short video about how to help dancers through perfectionism? They've got you. Want to listen to a self-talk podcast on your drive? Absolutely. How about real-time virtual sessions with mental health professionals? It's all inside your membership. And this isn't just fluff. All resources are science-backed and created in partnership with DanceSend's Advisory Board of Mental Health Professionals. As a partner of DanceSend, I've got a gift for you. Enter code BRAINY at checkout to try 1 full month for free. You truly have nothing to lose. Try it out for free and see if it's the right fit for you. If not, no worries. Although I am pretty sure you're going to be as obsessed as I am. This membership is the real deal. I know you want to give your dancers the best support possible. That's why I can't wait for you to get your hands on this resource. Tap the link in the show notes and enter code BRAINY to try DanceSense Council free today.
Who would have thought, like, Missouri, of all places?
Oh, I know. St. Louis has an incredible dance scene.
When you were in St. Louis,
Uh-huh.
you met your now husband, right?
Yeah.
So did you meet dancing together?
No, he was in St. Louis Ballet and I was in Big Muddy. And St. Louis, I don't know if you ever went to one of them, but they used to do, I don't think they do them anymore. They were called, there was like combo performances that Dance St. Louis would put on. So it'd be like Madco, Big Muddy, and St. Louis Ballet would all like do a show together. It was called New Dance Horizons. So that year it was like a female theme. So it was 3 female choreographers and the companies. So he was in Amy Seibert's piece. I was in Stephanie Martinez's piece. Shout out to both beautiful choreographers. And we both were just like checking each other backstage. And he had been coming for the past year to Big Muddy shows, and I had been going to St. Louis Ballet shows. And the nice thing about the St. Louis dance community, I don't know if it still happens, but back then in the summers, we would do community classes between both companies. It was on a little Facebook page and different dancers would take turns teaching, and you could throw a $3 like fee towards the studio rental. And then we would just give each other class. And it was St. Louis Ballet and Big Muddy. And that's the first time we met was a year before. And so we had kind of like kept an eye on each other, but it was that weekend where I asked the St. Louis Ballet dancers out for a drink after, and then me and him started dating the very next day.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
The rest is history, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And it was at that point I had decided I thought I was going to retire from dance. I just was a little burnt out. And I mean, at that point I was 28 and already had been a full-time dancer away from home for 10 years. And I was like, I'm done. I'm finished. And so I was planning to move back to California. I turned out staying in St. Louis for a whole year while he did another season with St. Louis Ballet. And I just took class and taught and did a year off, which was really good for my mental health. It was amazing.
So at that point you were just like, I think I'm good. I think I'm going to move on to something different.
Yeah, I really thought I was going to go to college. And my dad was like, what's happening to the universe? Emily said college. But I like had hit a point where I was realizing I was putting more stock of what people thought of me in my dancing than in what I thought of my dancing. And I hit a very big emotional wall where I kind of realized I had put so much of my energy into what everyone else thought of me as a dancer that I didn't even know what I thought of myself as a dancer anymore. And it had been conditioned for so long in my like life that I didn't even realize I was doing it until like I was like just a mess. I was a mess. And I kind of just reached a point where I like looked at my boss and I was like, I love everything you've provided for me. I love it here. I love you. You're a great person, but I don't think I can dance right now. And I just needed that year. And they let me take class. So I took class at Big Muddy then for that next year. I remember the first class after I was like off contract and just dancing for myself. And this teacher who's in St. Louis, and she taught class for us all the time. She came up to me and she goes, I've never seen you dance like that. Oh. And I just felt so free because what I was doing in the studio only mattered to me, and it didn't matter to who was paying my bills and paying my contract or whatever. And it was the first time I like actually felt like I was just dancing in my entire adult life. And so that was a really transformative year where I like set aside a bunch of time for myself and like really discovered that I did want to go back to dancing, but that I needed to readjust my thought process and my approach. It was huge.
That's amazing. And I think it's very brave to take the time off and to do that also, because especially as you're getting, I'm doing quotes, but older, in the dance world, you start to feel like, well, if I don't keep going, I'm not going to be able to get back into it. So to be able to take that and say, I have to do this for myself is just really brave. And I think that's really cool that you found that for yourself and you took the time and you didn't rush it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot, I know like going through retiring from dance, I had a big identity crisis and I'm sure there was a lot swirling through your head.
Yes.
But giving yourself that space.
Yeah. Well, and I was still young enough that like I knew I could go back if I changed my mind, but then I knew I needed that year. I had like put some irons in the fire of like possible freelance gigs that didn't really pay off. And I actually wasn't too upset about it. It kind of paid off for me to like, I worked at a yoga studio. I taught chair ballet at Vitality Ballet, shout out in St. Louis. And I taught at a few studios and I just had a year where I could like, and it was hard, like going to shows was really difficult. I like volunteered to be an usher at a big Muddy show and was like, came home and was like, that was hard. It wasn't like easy. It turned out being just a really transformative year that I didn't realize I needed.
You do this year and then what happened? So you and Greg, were you kind of like, okay, we're ready for a new scene, or what was that?
Yeah. So I had started putting the point shoes back on.
Okay.
Just to open up more door possibilities. We were reached out to, this is where it really pays to know people. We had 2 choreographers reach to us and be like, hey, this Island Moving Company is looking for a male and a female. And we put your name down as like, you guys could apply. And so we sent in our stuff and we had some phone calls with Mickey Olson, the artistic director at the time. And she turned out they were coming on tour to Missouri Contemporary Ballet. And so I reached out to Karen and was like, hey, can me and my boyfriend audition for Island Moving Company at your studios? And she said yes. One of the most amazing stories of my life is that she said yes to that. To this day, think like not every director would ever have done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know. She's amazing. And so she let us audition for Island Moving Company while you guys were taking class together. And so we got offered contracts and crazy story. Greg finished his last performance of, I think, Cinderella with St. Louis Ballet. And we got in a car and drove through the night to Rhode Island. We started with, I am now Newport Contemporary Ballet, but we started with the company in April of 2018. And we literally drove through the night, got to the house we were staying at. They were providing us a place to stay for a little bit of time. And it was midnight. We got up the next morning, went to class, and we had never been to Rhode Island. We did not know where we were signing up to be. We didn't know a single dancer. It was insane. Like when we auditioned for the company, they didn't know we were auditioning. They thought we were in the company.
Yeah.
They had no idea who we were. Like, and I was clearly knew everyone. I'm going around saying hi to all of you. And so they thought I was in the company. They had no idea who I was. So it wasn't until we showed up for that first day of work, they're like, oh, you guys were the people in Missouri. We didn't know who was who. So we turned out going in and doing a full rehearsal day. And we go out the front door and realize that we literally live on an island and we could see the water. And we were like, wow, this is really cool.
Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. It's so
it's
beautiful
stunning here. It's ridiculous. And so we did our first show with the company and we were like, all right, cool. This is a fun place. And we've been here now ever since. So we've been here since spring of 2018.
So 6 years.
It's the longest I've ever been in a company. It took me marrying somebody. I think I needed somebody to hold me down.
More stability.
Otherwise I'd probably just bopping around somewhere else.
So what is it like to dance with your husband? Do you guys bicker? Do you get along? What's that experience like?
Well, it was crazy because, as I said, we weren't coworkers and most dancers meet as coworkers. And so we didn't know how to work with each other. And the first choreographer we worked with put us together and we'd had this big pas de deux and stuff. Yeah, we fought. We figured out quickly who we were in the studio, because who you are at home and who you are as a person and who you are as a professional can be different. We now, 6 years in, know how to work with each other. We've been paired up now and we have a good working, but I mean, we'll get snippy with each other quicker than anyone else in the company. But that would be weird if we didn't. It definitely, we've learned how to work with each other. It took that first piece. I remember he was like, oh, I normally don't put couples together. And he was like, do you guys work well together? And we looked at each other. We're like, sure.
We don't know.
We don't know, but we'll give it a try. We get along. We'd only been together for like a year dating wise. So we were like, I don't know. But I mean, we learned a lot about each other becoming coworkers. A lot. Because up until that point, we had done we worked at the yoga studio together and we'd done some other things. But like being a dancer with your spouse can be, I mean, you're in a room with each other like all day.
Yeah, and it's like you're obviously have an intimate relationship personally, but being a dancer, you have an intimate relationship with your coworkers in a whole different way. And it's not like when you're working in an office and it's like, hey, I need this report or something. I mean,
No.
you can tell I don't work in an office, right? It's just different the way you are working so closely together and your performance is so closely impacted by what they do. And like you had different ideas of how you like to work together. And also you have to give your partner feedback a lot.
Yes.
And it can be hard to do that. Had you ever dated a dancer before?
No.
No.
I had a strict rule against it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I was so against it in the past. I was just like, no, I don't date men who dance. Like, I just don't do it. And it wasn't anything against guys who dance. They're amazing people. But it was just like, I had kind of made that rule for myself that like, I didn't want that. And so on our first date, I looked at him and I go, welcome. Somehow you broke my mold because I've never dated a dancer.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
Yeah.
And your wedding looked amazing. I was like,
oh my God.
2 dancers. That dance floor it was on fire.
It was insane. The DJ was like, this is crazy.
Seriously. Oh my gosh. I love that. So you guys have been in Newport now for 6 years. And
Yeah.
I love that, like, in addition to dancing, you also kind of branched out. So you're doing social media for the company. You're starting to do freelance with teaching and choreo. Like, talk to me about how you're balancing dancing on a contract in a company with all the other things that you want to do.
I am very blessed because when I was at Mareck, that's kind of when Instagram was like taking off, I would say. And so I started the Instagram for the company.
Oh my gosh, we didn't even have an Instagram before that.
Yeah. And so I remember asking Karen, I'm like, can I start the Instagram? And I remember I started making like promo videos for the company, unsolicited, just was like making promo videos.
They were amazing. Well, and I remember what's funny about that is like, I think there was for a time, it was kind of like anyone could post on the Instagram. So like a sepia filter or something on like a picture of the dressing room.
Yeah, it was.
So we really needed your like finesse there.
Yeah. So I started making promo videos because I had started doing that back at home in California that year. I was home. Actually, I was just talking to the friend the other day, but she said she made a piece on us during like low parts with the company. We would film the rehearsals and I just started making promos for the piece. And she was just like, this is so random. And so there was something I've always liked doing is like making promos for dance. And so I started doing that in Colombia. And so when I got here, there was a vacancy in who was running social media. And they were like, who wants to do it? And it was for free. And I was like, yo, I'll do it. And so I started doing it. And so for a year and up until quarantine, it was completely free. But COVID hit and social media was how we survived. That's how I started making it into a job. I became a staff member at that point. And so now I run all our like social media and marketing and stuff while being a dancer. And I like have learned so much about small arts organizations and how they work and how they tick. And I've learned how to like edit a website and how to do like mail and e-blast and, all those different things that you don't think about. I've been very privileged that the company, Newport Contemporary Ballet, has like let me into that fold and let me run it. So I've been running the social media now for 5 years here. I've learned so much. I still make all the videos, but yeah, so I got to take that on. And all the while I've been teaching in the school here and teaching. And I also, on top of it all, like started to fall in love with like creating and choreographing. I started in comp studios. I still love my comp kids. The first couple pieces I would not want anyone to ever see ever again, but I learned how to choreograph and I learned how to create on these amazing kids. And from there, I've gotten the chance to choreograph we have a junior company here and I've gotten to choreograph on them a few times. And the trainee program we have here, I choreographed on them. And now I make YAGP pieces, which is a fun challenge all in it. I make the contemporary solos. Each time I do it, I feel like I learn something new about myself as a creator and I get to grow. And it's to me becoming something that I get just as much satisfaction watching somebody dance, something I made, if not more sometimes than me dancing itself. It's a completely different feeling. It's really cool. And the same with teaching now. Teaching has become, as I've gotten older, it's become something I find so fulfilling and exciting that when I was in my 20s, I just was like, but now it's like, no, I love teaching. So getting to do all those things and have all these skill sets. And every time I said yes to something, I grew from it and learned what I liked and didn't like and things like that. And so it's been a big blessing having the ability to do so many other jobs on top of dancing, because it helped me discover other passions and love outside of just being a dancer. Because I think, sometimes if I only danced, I don't know if I would have found all these things at this point in my life. I don't know if I would have understood how much I can love teaching or choreographing or even running social media and like making a video. So it's been a big blessing with the small company life to be given opportunities where I can find other passions beyond being a dancer, which has been really cool.
That is so cool. I think that's such an important part. And then it also feeds into the studio, then you're more well-rounded as a dancer. I feel like being a teacher taught me so much about being a dancer, because having to analyze things when you're watching them, it's like, oh, okay, now I've actually thought about this thing that I do too. And it all just comes full circle back to people sometimes, I think, are afraid that if they branch out, it'll take away from their dancing and they won't be putting as much into that. Whereas on the flip side, it's actually just going to make your dancing better to have other things and to do social media and like watch it from that lens too and be like, oh, wow, I can see these different views and all the different things you do.
Yeah, it grows you in a way you don't expect. And as you said, it doesn't, there can be a misconception of like detracting from your like craft as a dancer, but actually I think it just promotes it. Cause like there are days where I teach and I'll give a correction and I'll be like, oh, have I thought about that recently? Mm-hmm. And I'll go take class the next day and I'll be like, oh, take your own advice, Emily.
Always. It is humbling.
It is. So it's all these different avenues. And even with bartending, I bartended for about 10 years or is in a restaurant industry of some kind for about 10 years of my career now. And like what I learned from serving and bartending is one thing at a time, compartmentalizing, not seeing the row of tickets you have to make, but making that one ticket at a time and letting yourself digest one thing at a time. I think things like that, I go into the studio and then I'm not going to look at the 45-minute dance I have to learn. I'm going to look at the 8 counts I have. And I'm going to be able to like take that skill set and add it to the studio. And, dance applies to the outside world, but I think the outside world can apply to dance in a way that sometimes we forget about.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Okay. Before we wrap up, I would like to know, what advice would you give to aspiring dancers who are pursuing a career?
Ooh. Mm-hmm. Don't assume Be open to learning and be open to saying yes to something that might not seem like what you want in the moment. But sometimes I think until you experience it, you don't really know what you're looking for 100%. I think sometimes as dancers, I know for me, I got lost in being like, I'm going to be a ballerina. I'm going to be a ballerina. I'm going to be a ballerina. If ballet companies say no, I don't know what I'm going to do about myself. And the more I opened myself up to, well, I do actually like to move differently, or this person did tell me I kind of have a knack for contemporary. And the more I opened myself up to things I didn't think I wanted, the more I found that actually what I wanted wasn't something I expected at all. And so what you set your expectations at, allow them to adjust and change, because you never know what you're actually going to enjoy doing in the studio or doing in general as a professional dancer until you actually get to experience it. And my last thing would be, it's still a job. Don't forget that it's easy to think that it's going to be, I just get to dance all day, but it is a job. And there are going to be days that suck and there are going to be days that are hard, and just take a deep breath and you're going to have that day you enjoy. And that's what gets you through the days that are hard, because it is still a job. Even though we love what we do, it's hard.
Yep. Sometimes more so, because we love it so much.
You love it. And let that love take you, because sometimes it is a job.
Truly, absolutely. I think it's easy to forget that sometimes. I love that, Emily. Thank you so much for all of this. And if anybody listening wants to learn more about you as a dancer or teacher or choreographer, where can they find you?
Yeah. So my Instagram is EmilyBaker8. And then I have a website, EmilyBakerDance.com.
Thank you so much, Emily. I'll put that all in the show notes. I just love chatting with you today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, of course. This is so fun.
Thank you for tuning in to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. If you found this episode insightful, entertaining, or maybe a bit of both, I would so appreciate you taking a moment to leave a rating and hit subscribe. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll join our community of dancers passionate about building a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. Plus, your ratings help others discover the show too. I'll be back with a new episode next week. In the meantime, be sure to follow along on Instagram at The Brainy Ballerina for your daily dose of dance career guidance.